Urgent. Apocalypse from Kamchatka to Moscow. Russia is in flames and darkness. Ukrainian Armed Forces drones are torching oil depots. The ground is exploding beneath people's feet. And Moscow is cut off from the world. The elements have struck Russia. Sochi is sinking into the ground. Death rows and a transport collapse. Moscow has been locked in a ring. Russians are howling in despair. The month of Black January is decisively finishing off the opposing enemy completely. Sensational! Drones from Ukraine set fire to an oil depot in the Belgorod region. Russians rushed to film everything on video. According to analysts, at the center of the fiery spectacle is the Stary Oskol oil depot, which is one of the largest suppliers of fuel and lubricants in the Belgorod region and is located just 100 kilometers from the Ukrainian state border. Even the regional governor couldn't hide the devastation. Vyacheslav Gladkov stated that as a result of the detonation, several storage tanks on the site caught fire. And of course, trouble never comes alone. Russians are simply being cut off from the internet by their own authorities. In Kamchatka, mobile internet has been unavailable for over a week now. It was shut down on December 31st due to the threat of drone use. According to the regional governor, the restrictions will remain in place as long as the strategic and tactical situation requires it.
Kamchatka remains a strategically important region. In the current reality, we must be prepared for any challenges. The threat of drone attacks on military and infrastructure facilities is relevant not only for the western borders of our country.
It seems Kamchatka isn't the only region being cut off. In Moscow and St. Petersburg, there are proposals to cut off mobile communications for Russians so they don't watch unnecessary videos. The deputy chairman of the State Duma Committee on Information Policy, Information Technology and Communications stated that this is being done for security reasons. He also gave a rather useful piece of advice.
Mobile internet may be turned off in order to ensure the safety of our citizens so they can freely go outside, celebrate New Year or other holidays. People will finally get a break from endlessly watching unnecessary videos. And if you need to congratulate someone, just visit them, ring the doorbell, and give your congratulations in person.
Well, Russians aren't exactly thrilled about this turn of events.
Bring the internet to Krasnodar Krai because in case anyone doesn't know, we simply don't have it here. Mobile internet just doesn't work at all, only Wi-Fi at home and at work. And even that only works every now and then. That's it, that's where civilization ends. And
that's not even all the bad news for Russia. Russia is entering its 26th year under the blows of fate. In Sochi, on a quiet January day, the ground exploded beneath people's feet. A muffled underground roar, houses shaking, panic in the streets. An earthquake with a magnitude of 4.1 struck in the Black Sea. The epicenter was just 40 kilometers from Sochi. Windows rattled, dishes clattered, people ran out into the street. In the city center, the intensity was 3 points. The mayor of Sochi urgently got in touch and confirmed the incident via telegram.
The epicenter of the earthquake was located in the waters of the Black Sea, approximately 5 kilometers from the Sochi shore. The strength of the tremors in the Lazarevsky district was 4 points, and in the central district, 3 points. And
this is only the beginning of a catastrophic series of events. The New Year holidays turned into a nightmare for the city. Snowfall, hurricane-force winds, paralyzed roads, disruptions, and garbage collection failures. The city is operating in emergency mode on the verge of collapse as a result of
the wind gusts. More than 400 trees were reported to have fallen. Specialized crews are working in every district of the city to eliminate the consequences.
An apocalypse on the roads of the Rostov region. Drivers are in a panic. The highways have turned into an icy hell. Snowfalls and freezing temperatures have made the roads deadly dangerous. Meanwhile, a transportation collapse is unfolding on the border between Russia and Georgia. Hundreds of cars are trapped in a snowbound prison, the land border is closed, and tourists and locals are spending the night in their vehicles. A grader is crawling along. Recently, things have also been tense in Moscow. Ukrainian drones have encircled the Russian capital. UAVs attacked Moscow. 200 flights were delayed and some were cancelled. Domodedovo, Vnukovo, and Zhukovsky are in chaos. Russians stood in lines while the airports were paralyzed. An apocalypse is approaching. Moscow is gripped by panic. Russian air defense allegedly shot down 25 drones and another 42 supposedly crashed as they approached the capital. Moscow's mayor Sergei Sobyanin hastily wrote about this in a panic.
Emergency service specialists are working at the site where the debris fell.
A monitoring channel noted that about 40 drones were encircling Moscow. Russia is in hell. Collapse 2026. Inferno ignites. Explosions are happening. Moscow has plunged into icy darkness. January has become a true death sentence for the Kremlin. While propaganda lies about stability, Russia has turned into a giant torch. Shocking details coming up next.
Russia is waking up more and more often without light, heat, or any sense of stability. Almost every day brings new strikes on the energy infrastructure. Oil refineries, thermal power plants,
This is absolutely no joke. Things are truly and seriously on fire right now.
and again, oil refineries. Entire districts are losing electricity, and with it, heating as well.
This is Belgorod. Basically, there's no power anywhere in Belgorod at all.
Accidents at thermal power plants, fires at oil refineries, and large-scale blackouts. These are no longer isolated incidents, but a systemic pattern across Russia.
Everything that mirrors the war onto the territory of the Russian Federation can undoubtedly be considered a success. Ukraine has done exactly what Russia did not expect.
In many regions of Russia, shutting down power plants means not only darkness, but also cold. People are left without heating and hot water, even in places where there have been no strikes on infrastructure.
If you've never ever had to completely fill an entire bathtub with freshly fallen snow just to go to the bathroom and then patiently wait for it to slowly melt, and if you always had at least some water, then things were always good for you. I went out to get water so I could wash the dishes.
But if such failures are happening even without Ukraine's involvement, the question arises, what's going on with Russia's energy infrastructure?
When it comes to cities, Russians are at least trying to address the issue somehow, doing repairs as quickly as possible. How successful they are with this energy infrastructure is another question. But as for villages, well, it's clear that villages aren't electorally significant. They're not important, not many people live there, and Putin just, pardon the slang, doesn't care.
What's surprising is that even in Russia, people understand that their situation is far from ideal.
If we carefully examine the official and publicly available information regarding the current state of wear and tear on our essential utility systems, it becomes quite alarming and a cause for significant concern, especially when you consider and factor in various external impacts and unforeseen circumstances that could further exacerbate the situation. Well, it doesn't exactly inspire optimism. All of this doesn't give much hope.
A separate vulnerable point is the oil refineries. They supply not only Russia's economy, but also its formidable army.
Significant problems frequently arise both during essential repairs at the various refineries, because this critical process invariably requires a substantial amount of financial investment and a considerable amount of time, and also with comprehensively repairing the intricate logistics networks, which inherently has, let's say, a delicate house of cards effect. When you decisively knock out just one crucial element, all the other interconnected components collapse simultaneously at the very same time.
Repairs drag on, reserves are insufficient, and the winter period only amplifies the consequences of accidents.
These systemic problems with the energy sector in the Russian Federation have become extremely difficult to solve, both because of money and because of the lack of all the necessary components for repairs, because some of them, again, are import dependent. That is, Russia does not produce them itself, but buys them. And this is where, once again, the sanctions mechanisms come into play.
Of course, the bunker dweller spares no money for war, but when it comes to keeping his citizens' homes warm, he suddenly does.
Naturally, the level of negativity is rising. And this negativity is no longer just in rural areas where there are blackouts. Now, this negativity is actually concentrated in the big cities.
An energy crisis, even without Ukraine's involvement, is becoming a new reality for Russians. An expensive risk, constrained and increasingly unmanageable.
Just one day, say, with temperatures at -20 degrees in conditions where there is no heating, can destroy this entire system. So we really hope, of course, that it won't come to that. And we need to make sure that the heating plants aren't damaged, especially if, for example, the strikes on the thermal power stations continue.
When blackouts and lack of heat happen even without external interference, it says a lot about the state of the system. For Russia, such failures are increasingly becoming the norm, and with the involvement of friendly drones, it's turning into a completely new reality.
Our communities support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Shock, an absolute record in the special operation, Ukrainian drone swarms are wiping out the Russian army, a true month of execution for the occupiers. An unprecedented number of enemy targets have been hit. An incredible leap in Ukrainian technology that has shocked the entire world.
In 7 months, targets worth $20 billion. The defense forces set an absolute record for destroying Russian equipment and assets at the front, carrying out just under 1 million sorties on combat missions. The report on the work done was posted on Facebook by the UAV systems forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. And the numbers in it are truly impressive. Since the creation of the UAV systems forces in just under half a year, more than 50,000 occupiers have already been eliminated. And this figure continues to grow every month due to the expanding operational range of UAVs.
Unmanned systems too are increasingly generating more and more new lines of active combat contact. And the danger extends even further from the line of contact. Both in the enemy's operational space and in ours, the depth keeps increasing. As of today, the maximum complex zone is 15 kilometers. You could say that by the end of 2025, we reached a point where 25 kilometers became the most dangerous area for everything located there. By the middle of 2026, this significant distance is confidently expected to reach an approximate range of 30 to 40 kilometers, a considerable achievement.
Despite the fact that Russia is also making progress in the field of unmanned systems, experts say that the lead in drone innovation is unquestionably held by the Ukrainian Armed Forces. This is primarily due to decisions that commanders often make independently on the ground.
The Ground Unmanned Systems Company of the 93rd Separate Mechanized Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine has developed and is using an original version of an assault ground drone armed with a block of unguided NARS-5 aviation rockets. The commander in charge, with the call sign Electrician, who proposed this concept, said that the idea arose from a desire to increase the firepower of mobile ground platforms. The inspiration came from a UB-1657 rocket pod found on an old Soviet combat aircraft that had served as a monument for decades. The structure was carefully dismantled and restored for reuse.
And that's where the results come from. According to the same report from the drone operators, since May 2025, more than 7,500 Russian vehicles used to break through to positions have been destroyed, as well as over 5,500 motorcycles and another 2,500 cannons and howitzers. And of course, what about heavy equipment? During the same period, the Russians lost 532 tanks and hundreds of units of lightly armored vehicles.
The drone successfully reached the ambush site and waited for the Russian armored personnel carrier, a tracked vehicle with infantry. The ground drone opened fire on the front of the armored vehicle and damaged its control system, after which the tracked vehicle began to move uncontrollably. Then the TV-12.7 droid turned around and fired at the troop compartment of the armored personnel carrier with the Russian infantry inside. After the battle, the area was surveyed by reconnaissance UAVs, which discovered the tracked vehicle and the bodies of the eliminated occupiers in the forest belt.
At the same time, the Ukrainian Armed Forces use drones not only for attacks. In recent months, they have become a crucial element of Ukrainian logistics in the combat zone and have already saved hundreds of our soldiers' lives.
Advanced robotic ground systems are currently being utilized to effectively evacuate injured Ukrainian soldiers from dangerous combat zones, providing crucial support and assistance. We should also mention that logistics support is carried out by means of cargo is delivered by air, both with small, agile reconnaissance drones and with powerful heavy bombers. The key one being the advanced ZSV Vampire, for example, or other sophisticated drones that are fully capable of carrying significant and substantial loads, ensuring efficient and timely delivery.
At the same time, our command clearly understands the need to develop unmanned systems at the front. That's why new and innovative solutions are constantly being developed for the forward positions of the defense forces.
Ukraine is planning to create robotic strongpoints equipped with combat modules to counter Russian occupiers. This was reported by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. And
while government programs are working on the large-scale technologization of the front, our soldiers are also improving their own UAVs. The latest trend at the end of 2025 has been new batteries for drones, which are already allowing for more effective operation with existing equipment.
Now, new types of batteries mean that the battery itself is lighter, while its charge capacity is greater. As a result, the drone powered by it can fly farther. The farther a drone can fly and deliver useful payloads, in our case that's munitions, the better. This allows us to more effectively take out the enemy in areas where they are concentrating before moving up to the air defense contact line.
Work on updating UAVs is also underway beyond the border. The latest invention is the upgraded Shaheds, which are now being equipped with anti-aircraft missile systems. Recently, our air defense shot down just such a drone. These missiles are intended to counter Ukrainian aircraft that shoot down enemy drones. However, according to analysts, although this innovation has caused a stir, it does not pose any significant threat.
You need to get a good lock on the target in order to launch a manpads. In addition, you have to keep it locked for some time because a manpads doesn't work instantaneously. Before launching, you need to cool down the guidance system, the seeker head, and that takes time. So, let's put it this way, there is practically no danger for aircraft. The operator won't be able to track an aircraft and engage it with such a device. When I talk about manpads, I mean the general manpad system on the Shahed, yes. For helicopters, the danger is a bit greater because helicopters have less maneuverability and speed.
But for Shaheds, the danger is enormous. In addition to aviation and anti-aircraft guns, which have been successfully shooting down Russian UAVs for several years now, interceptor drones have now joined them, taking on a huge share of the work.
Interceptor drones have carved out a rather important niche for themselves. They're not a magic bullet. They won't repel every attack on the country. But they do take out their share of Shaheds.
By the way, another record was set by the Defense Forces in December, destroying over 106,000 enemy targets, surpassing their own November numbers by more than 30%, and setting a historic high for the destruction of Russian air defense and radar systems. In numbers, that came out to 4 units per day.
Moscow is in hell, Putin is being humiliated live on air, the heart of Russia has turned to coal, this is a catastrophe. While the Kremlin was celebrating, a whirlwind of vengeance swept into Moscow, and the empire's energy system collapsed into the abyss in a matter of seconds. A total blackout, all the details of the fiery triumph of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. Watch right now.
Strikes of vengeance. A blackout in the Moscow suburbs as a New Year's gift. On the eve of the new year, more than 100,000 Russians were left without electricity and internet. It's possible that Moscow will be next.
Interestingly, the park is affected too, and this whole part of the city is without power. In
December, Ukraine intensified its attacks on Russian energy infrastructure, hitting the largest number of targets and the widest range of targets since the beginning of the war.
Whatever the specific case may be, the Russian army absolutely needs a consistent supply of vital fuel, and it critically needs its essential logistics supply lines to the front lines to function effectively, and those crucial supply lines are currently being significantly disrupted as well.
Bloomberg analysts have calculated that in the last month of 2025, there were at least 24 attacks on Russian oil refineries, oil tankers, and other facilities at sea, as well as major water supply structures.
This war is coming to them. This war is coming to their homes. And accordingly, they are increasingly feeling the consequences of their country's aggressive policies. If you hadn't started the war, you wouldn't have these problems. Now you do have these problems. So this is, among other things, a direct statement. Guys, if you somehow stop the war, you won't have these problems either.
After the drone attack on the night of December 31st in Rybinsk, Yaroslavl region, the temp oil depot owned by Rosreserve was burning brightly. The oil depot is an important storage and distribution point for petroleum products for the Central Federal District and for the entire northeast of the European part of Russia.
One drone hit the storage tank, one drone landed in the field. First of all, it's important to understand that when a war of attrition is underway, and more, the war that Russia started against Ukraine is taking on this form. This war of attrition is a war of economies. That's why strikes are being carried out. Strikes on economic targets undermine the state's ability to remain engaged in this war.
Journalists note that these attacks increase pressure on Russian exports, which are already struggling due to international sanctions against the country's major oil refining companies.
The policy of appeasing the aggressor has never yielded results in world history. And it is mistaken. But Putin was counting on Trump to do just that. But Putin saw that during the meeting between Zelensky and Trump said there were no time constraints. Putin had expected that at this meeting, Trump would say, "That's it. Today you make a deal. Today you sign that Donbas goes to Russia." Zelensky didn't do that, and Putin immediately came up with the story about attacks on his residence.
Although Moscow still exports significant volumes of oil, the flow of petrodollars, a key source of funding for the war, is shrinking. And
that's why Russia is taking some rather unconventional steps, because they understand that if they don't steer the situation in the direction they need right now, they might not even be able to continue waging war. Simply because when your economy collapses, when you just stop being able to pay pensions, and when salaries in the public sector aren't being paid, it's just not possible to keep fighting, because there will be a lot of internal unrest which will escalate into protests, and those in turn will escalate into a revolution.
Meanwhile, Putin continues to regularly strike Ukrainian energy and civilian infrastructure, leaving thousands of people without electricity, water, and heating in freezing temperatures. But the most terrible thing about all of this is that some families are left without their loved ones, who are killed by Russia.